Saren was an Omega, the lowest of all ranks, a whisper among a pack that thundered with pride. On the night of the full moon, Alpha Varek, the man she'd once believed was her destiny, shattered her world in front of everyone. He didn't just break her heart. He stripped her of her life, casting her out into a death sentence beneath the teeth of a blizzard so fierce it swallowed the land whole. Hunted by rogues and frozen to the bone, she collapsed in the snow, convinced that this was how her story would end. But then through the chaos of the storm, a new howl tore the air apart, a sound, pure and silver, heavy with raw power. She followed it, desperate for survival, and stumbled straight into the arms of a stranger, cloaked in dominance and mystery. She didn't know it yet, but she had just been saved by the Alpha King himself. Inside the Blood Moon Lodge, tension coiled thick in the air. It was the night of the marking moon, and Saren's hands wouldn't stop trembling. At 20, she was a late bloomer, even for an Omega. Her wolf, a small, pale creature, was gentle by nature, and in the brutal order of the pack, gentleness was weakness. Saren stood at the edge of the great hall apart from the others. Around her, unmated females flaunted their strength, bold, confident, all eager to be chosen neath the burning gaze of their leader, Alpha Varek. He embodied everything an alpha should, broad-shouldered, commanding, dangerous. Once he had been her protector, her hope. Deep down she had prayed that he would be her mate. Tonight she would know for sure. The ritual began. Flames roared in the central pit, painting demonic shadows that danced across the timber walls. We gathered beneath the eye of the moon. Varek's voice boomed, silencing the chatter. Tonight we strengthened the pack. He began calling names one by one. A beta warrior found his delta mate. 2 hunters claimed each other. Each time cheers erupted like thunder. Saren's heart pounded like a trapped bird against her ribs. Sweat slicked her palms. Finally, only she remained. Varek's dark eyes scanned the crowd and landed on her. He didn't smile. His lips curled just slightly. Whispers rippled through the hall. Saren. He said her name in accusation. She stepped forward, legs trembling, eyes cast down. This was it. He would approach, breathe, her scent declare their bond. But he didn't move. Saren, he said again, louder this time. For weeks, rogues have tested our borders. Confusion flickered in her eyes. What did this have to do with their bonding? A pack is a chain. Varek continued, his tone sharpening into steel. And it is only as strong as its weakest link. Blood drained from her face. The whispers grew harsher, colder. I, Varek Alpha of the Blood Moon Pack, will not tolerate weakness beside me. He pointed directly at her. The spirits told me my mate was in this hall. But when I look at you, Saren, I feel nothing. No pull, no bond. No, she whispered. It couldn't be true. She felt something, a faint, desperate connection, didn't she? You are a barren Omega, he spat. Small, fragile, useless. The rogues who slipped through our lands last week did so under your watch. I didn't sense anything, she stammered, tears burning in her eyes. I swear it, Alpha. Exactly. His roar slammed into her like a physical blow, his command nearly forcing her to her knees. You are broken. You bring nothing to this pack. He stalked toward her, towering like a predator. The pack watched cold, merciless, their faces mirroring his contempt. Her childhood friends, Nira and Rowan, turned away. I, Varek Alpha of the Blood Moon Pack, his voice thundered through the hall, formally reject you, Saren. Of no lineage as my mate, and as a member of this pack. The words struck like claws through her chest. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by laughter, cruel cutting. Rejected. The words seared into her soul like fire. You are exiled, Varek declared. Leave our lands by moonrise. Varek turned his back on her, and just like that, the ceremony was over. The pack followed their alpha toward the feast, closing ranks and leaving Saren's standing utterly alone in the echoing emptiness of the great hall. Thunder cracked against the lodge windows, shaking the timber frames. The storm had arrived. Moonrise was now. Tears streamed down her cheeks, freezing before they reached her jaw as the doors burst open beneath the force of the wind. She had no food, no weapon, no pack, only the storm itself. With a broken sob, Saren clutched the thin ceremonial tunic to her chest and ran. Laughter followed her into the night, cruel and cold, chasing her out into the screaming wind and blinding snow of Blackwood Ridge. The forest ahead was a nightmare of shadows and shrieking air. The storm struck with a rage she had never seen. This wasn't just snow, it was an assault. Shards of ice slashed her face and hands. The temperature plummeted. Her tunic soaked through in seconds. She forced her wolf forward a desperate trembling shift. It did little good. Her wolf Lyra was small-built for sensing and empathy, not endurance. Her pale fur was thin against the blizzard, and her body offered no warmth to fight the cold. Run. Just run. She plunged deeper into the ridge, her paws sinking into the thickening snow. Every instinct screamed for her to dig into the earth and wait out the storm, but Varek's words echoed in her head. Hunted as a rogue, she couldn't stop. She had to escape his land. But Blood Moon territory stretched 50 miles across. Beyond it lay the neutral zone, Donovan Pass, infamous for the very rogues Varek had accused her of missing. Her lungs burned. The wind howled like a wounded god, drowning every sound. Ice clung to her lashes, and her paws went numb raw from the frozen ground. Grief twisted inside her, heavier than fear. He rejected me. The bond she thought she'd felt a faint thread to her alpha hadn't faded. It had been torn away, leaving a raw, bleeding void in her soul. She hadn't just lost a mate. She had lost her purpose. An unclaimed packless Omega was nothing prey for anyone who found her. A branch heavy with ice snapped above and crashed inches from her, burying her in snow. She yelped and stumbled back, collapsing into a deep drift. Panic bit through her chest like knives. She fought to rise, her small frame shaking violently. The cold wasn't just cold, it was alive, predatory, gnawing her will to survive. I'm going to die out here. The thought came sharp and final. Varek hadn't just exiled her. He had condemned her. Then through the shrieking wind, something new sliced the air, a scent. Strong, musky, metallic. Rogues. Her head snapped up. Through the snow, 3 shadows broke from the darkness, massive, mangy, scarred. Their yellow eyes burned with hunger as they fixed on her. They'd caught her scent, a lone wounded Omega, lost in their hunting grounds. A low growl rumbled in her chest, but it came out weak, trembling, a pitiful sound. The largest of them, a brute with a missing ear, stepped forward, his snarl curling into a laugh. An Omega, he growled. A gift from the storm. They didn't rush. They circled her slowly, predators savoring the chase. Saren backed against a thick pine, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. This is it, she thought. A brutal, forgotten death. She closed her eyes and saw Varek's face, his smirk satisfied and cruel. She refused to give these monsters the pleasure of her fear. She braced for the impact, the first tearing bite, and then it came. A sound so immense it froze the world. Not a growl, not a snarl, a howl, but not like any she'd ever heard before, pure silver and hauntingly clear. It split the blizzard apart, a sound of command, older than time itself. The storm seemed to hold its breath. It was the cry of absolute power, and the ache of a soul as lonely as hers. The 3 rogues froze, their snarls dying mid-breath. Whatever dominance they'd shown vanished in an instant, replaced by raw animal terror. Their ears pinned flat, their bodies low, trembling. Something in that howl had clawed through their instincts and reminded them who ruled the wild. Saren felt it too, an ache in her bones, a pull deep in her chest. That howl hadn't been meant for her. It was a call cast over her, a declaration of power. It came from the north, beyond the storm, beyond the impossible ridges of Donovan Pass. The scarred rogue Corin shook off his fear first. With a snarl he lunged, choosing the easy prey. Saren screamed, but before his fangs could find her throat, a silver blur hit him like a lightning strike. The sound was violent, the crack of impact echoing through the storm as Corrin's body was hurled into a boulder with bone-shattering force. The other two rogues, Drake and Sorn, barely had time to react. The newcomer was a wolf, but not like any Saren had ever seen. He was colossal, easily half again the size of any alpha, larger even than Varek in full shift. His fur glimmered like liquid metal, silver, so bright it reflected the chaos of the storm around him. He moved with terrifying precision. One heartbeat and Drake was gone, his throat crushed in a single effortless bite. Another, and Sorn's dying growl was cut short as the silver beast broke him mid-stride. 10 seconds. 3 corpses. Silence fell heavy over the ridge, broken only by the shriek of the wind and Saren's ragged breaths. The giant wolf stood over the bodies, his sides heaving, his breath fogging in the cold. Blood streaked his shoulder, bright crimson against silver. Slowly he turned, his eyes locked on her. They weren't the sick yellow of the rogues, nor the muddy brown of Varek. They were the color of a storm breaking over ice, piercing, intelligent, and utterly unrelenting. He took one slow step toward her. Saren whimpered, pressing herself back against the trunk of a frozen pine. The great wolf stopped studying her with an expression that almost looked pained. Then with a low grunt he turned away and limped toward a cluster of rocks. A shudder ran through him, and then the shift. Saren gasped and turned her head as his massive form shrank, bones cracking, fur receding. When she looked again, a man stood where the wolf had been. He was tall, towering even by alpha standards, and built with a lean, predatory strength. His skin was marked with cuts, a deep wound, bleeding down one arm as he reached for a dark pair of pants tucked into a hidden pack. He pulled them on, grimacing, his muscles flexing beneath the strain. Even through the blizzard she could see him clearly. His hair was long and silver, tied back in a warrior's knot, though the wind had pulled loose strands across a face carved from stone, severe, striking, impossible to look away from. He looked like a king who'd stepped out of an ancient legend, and he was staring straight at her. "You're freezing," he said, his voice low and deep, carrying that same quiet authority that made the air vibrate. It rolled through her, calming her panic even as it awakened something else, something primal. "He would have killed you." Saren could only nod, teeth chattering uncontrollably. The man stepped closer, eyes scanning her trembling wolf form. Then he crouched, wincing at the pull of his own wound, and extended a hand, large, calloused, still stained with the rogue's blood. "Shift," he commanded. It wasn't a shout yet. The weight of it left her no choice. The power in his tone went straight through her, and she obeyed. Her wolf receded, leaving her human naked, shaking, humiliated, kneeling in the snow. He didn't hesitate. Without a word, he stripped off his heavy winter parka and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth hit her instantly, thick and encompassing, smelling of pine frost and steel, with an undercurrent that was purely him. He pulled her gently to her feet. "Can you walk?" She tried, but her legs buckled beneath her. The exhaustion, the rejection, the cold, it was all too much. He grunted softly, frustration edging his tone, but not at her. In one fluid motion, he swept her up into his arms, one beneath her knees, one behind her back, lifting her as though she weighed nothing. Her head fell against his chest. Beneath the coat, his body radiated warmth, steady and solid. She could hear the deep, rhythmic thrum of his heartbeat. She was being carried by a stranger, a silver-eyed predator who had just slaughtered 3 wolves like they were nothing. Where are we going?" she whispered. He didn't look down. The storm howled around them, but his voice was steady as stone. "Shelter." He said, his tone a promise, rough and certain against the wind. They escaped the storm. Daxen moved through the blizzard like it obeyed him. Where the wind had nearly broken Saren, it parted before him like it feared him. He wasn't just enduring this mountain. He owned it, Pressed against his chest, buried in the oversized warmth of his parka, Saren drifted between exhaustion and the strange calm of safety. The gash on his shoulder, she noticed through half-lidded eyes, was already healing. Fast. Too fast. He wasn't just Alpha. He was something older, wilder. His scent wasn't just dominant. It carried the weight of the silver howl itself. He didn't speak. He just moved legs, long and powerful body, a walking furnace of strength. They walked for what felt like an hour, the storm howling around them. Just as Saren began to think they were hopelessly lost, he stopped. Before them was a cliff wall, nothing but sheer, unbroken rock. She opened her mouth to ask something, but he lifted a hand. Daxen reached out and pressed his palm against a section of stone that looked identical to everything else. For a second, nothing. Then the air shifted. A low, grinding hum rumbled under the wind. A slab of stone retracted, revealing a dark, man-made opening, not a cave. The entrance was smooth, precision cut, engineered. He carried her through it. The moment they passed the threshold, the stone slid shut behind them with a hiss. Silence fell. The storm's roar vanished instantly, leaving behind a tomb-like stillness. Then the lights came on. Soft, warm glows ran across the ceiling, guiding them down a high-tech tunnel of dark, polished walls. No torches, no flicker, just cold perfection. Saren whispered, "Who? Who are you?" He didn't answer, just kept walking. They passed closed doors until the hallway opened into a vast circular room. One entire wall was a glass floor to ceiling, offering a view of the blizzard, like they were inside a snow globe. On the opposite side sat a sunken leather sofa, a modern fireplace already flickering, and a sleek steel-trimmed kitchen. Daxen lowered her gently onto a thick fur rug in front of the flames. "Stay," he said. Then he disappeared. Saren didn't move. She sat there still, trembling, clutching the coat. This wasn't some lone wolf's hideout. This was a fortress. He returned moments later, shirtless, now blood wiped clean, working antiseptic over what remained of the gash. His chest and back were sculpted muscle shadows dancing over every plane in the firelight. In his arms folded black clothes. "They're clean," he said flatly, voice low. "Bathroom's through there. Get warm. Then we talk." Saren stood still, stunned. "Hi. Thank you." His icy blue gaze met hers, piercing, unreadable. "Don't thank me yet, little wolf. You've brought chaos to my door." He turned away, ending the conversation. Saren fled into the bathroom. It was sleek and black-tiled steam already filling the air. She scrubbed herself clean, scrubbed until Varek's voice, the lodge's betrayal. The blood on the snow all felt distant. The clothes were massive, a thermal shirt and sweatpants, but they were dry and warm. When she stepped back into the main room, her hair still damp. Daxen was standing at the glass window, one hand wrapped around a steaming mug, eyes fixed on the swirling storm outside. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the couch. She obeyed. He handed her a second mug, sweet tea, hot and thick. The heat stung her hands, but she welcomed it. He lowered himself into the chair across from her. In the flickering glow of the fire, his expression was unreadable. Then finally he spoke. "Alpha Varek," he said. It wasn't a question. Saren flinched. "Yes. He rejected you." Her voice cracked. "Said I was weak. A broken Omega. Blamed me for the rogue attack. Said I failed the patrol." His eyes narrowed, jaw tightening. "Did you know?" she whispered, eyes wide. "I swear I was on watch. I felt nothing." The border was clear, and then they were just there. "He lied," Daxen said calmly. Saren blinked. "What the rogues that attacked your patrol last week?" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Something darker moved behind his eyes. "They didn't slip past you. They were led in. But by who? And why? His voice was low, carrying a dangerous growl that made her shiver. Varek Thorn, he continued, his words cutting through the air. He's trafficking in poacher-grade silver, selling it to rogue factions in exchange for them thinning the herds on the lands of his rivals. He staged the attack on his own patrol to cover his tracks and needed a scapegoat. Saren's world tilted. No, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. Alpha Varek wouldn't. He's our Alpha. He's a traitor, the man said, his tone chilling. He took a sip of his tea before adding, and he's an idiot. He used the attack to get rid of you. He leaned forward, locking eyes with her, his gaze piercing. Was he your fated mate? I thought so. Saren's voice trembled with the weight of it all. I felt a bond. But when he rejected me, he said he felt nothing. The silver-haired man stared into the fire jaw tightening. The fool, he muttered. He's a blind, arrogant fool. Who are you? Saren asked again, her voice firmer this time. How do you know this? Are you from the Alpha Council? He gave a short, harsh laugh. Something like that. My name is Daxen. I'm a surveyor. Saren's brows furrowed and she repeated, Daxen. The name felt solid like the mountain itself. You saved my life, she said, still trying to wrap her mind around everything. I stopped you from complicating my mission, Daxen corrected her, his voice not unkind. Those 3 rogues, they were part of the pack Varek is in league with. Saren processed his words slowly. The man she had adored, the pack she had loved, had all been lies. The rejection had never been about her weakness. It had been because she was disposable. That realization cut deeper than any blade. Anger replaced her grief, cold and sharp. He cast me out, she said, her voice shaking with a new fury. He left me to die. Yes, Daxen replied calmly. He did. Saren's eyes narrowed, her heart racing. What will you do? Now I'll finish my mission, he said, the determination in his voice unwavering. I'll gather my proof and I'll bring it before the council. Varek Thorn will answer for his crimes. And me. She whispered, her voice small, fragile. Daxen's ice-blue gaze softened, just a fraction, the first hint of warmth she'd seen from him. For now you are a ghost. You died in the storm. As far as Varek knows, his problem is solved. You'll stay here with me until the storm passes, and I've finished my work. You're safer here than you've ever been in your life. He stood, walking over to a cupboard and pulling out a thick fur blanket. He tossed it to her, and she wrapped it around herself, grateful for the warmth. Get some sleep, he ordered. You are no longer a blood moon Omega. You are just Saren. And you are under my protection. He walked over to the armchair, settling into it with a quiet sigh. He didn't take the bed. He gave her the softest spot even in his own fortress, taking the watch instead. Saren curled up under the furs, her mind in a whirlwind. She was an exile, a ghost sheltered by a mysterious silver-haired warrior named Daxen, who commanded the forest and seemed to appear from thin air. As sleep began to claim her, she realized that the faint, desperate mate bond pull she had once felt for Varek was gone, scoured clean. In its place was something deeper, a warm, resonant hum deep in her chest. It was a comforting warmth that focused with unsettling precision on the sleeping silver wolf across the room. They were snowed in for 3 days. The storm, which Daxen called a white dragon, raged outside the glass wall, a silent, beautiful, terrifying movie. Inside the bunker, a strange domesticity settled over them. Daxen was a creature of intense discipline. He woke before dawn, meditating in the pre-light, his breathing slow and steady. Hours passed as he worked at a complex communication array in a back room, listening to static-laced reports that Saren couldn't decipher. He spoke in clipped, authoritative tones, mentioning routes near Donovan Pass and supply caches at Wyvern's Peak. She realized he wasn't just a surveyor. He was coordinating something much larger, yet he wasn't cold. On the first morning, she found herself huddled by the fire, jumping at every sound. "You're an Omega," Daxen said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Yes," she replied, curling in on herself instinctively. "Stop that," he ordered. "Your pack trained you to be a victim. They were wrong." Daxen's words echoed in the small, sparse room, a makeshift training area. He led her inside, his eyes sharp and calculating. The room smelled of stone and old wood, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Omegas are not weak. They are the heart of the pack. Saren stood there, listening intently as he moved around her. "You don't have an alpha's strength or a beta's resilience," he continued, his voice low, deliberate. "You have instinct. You are the pack's warning system. Your empathy, your senses, they are weapons if you know how to wield them." For the next 3 days, Daxen trained her, not in fighting, not in combat, but in control. He began simple. "Close your eyes," he ordered, his presence looming around her. "I'm going to move through the bunker. Track me." At first, Saren heard nothing. Silence. Then the slight shift of air as Daxen moved a shadow in the storm. "Don't listen with your ears." Daxen's voice came from a place she didn't expect. "Listen with your skin. Feel the change in the air. Feel the vibration in the floor." Slowly, Saren began to sense him. She felt the subtle changes, air pressure shifting, the faint whisper of his footfalls on the stone floor, the rush of his presence moving through the space like a gust of wind. "Good." His praise was simple but cut through her like a knife, a word so small yet more valuable to her than any jewel. He taught her about empathy. "When I entered the lodge," Saren confessed, her voice trembling, "I felt the tension, but I thought it was just my fear." "It was," Daxen said, "but it was also theirs." He paused for a moment, his gaze piercing. "An Omega feels the pack's emotions. You must learn to separate what is yours from what is theirs. Shield yourself. Filter it." Saren nodded, absorbing the lesson. Daxen sat opposite her, his posture rigid like a sentinel on watch. For an hour he projected his emotions first, a cold, calculated anger that made her flinch. Then a profound aching loneliness that nearly brought tears to her eyes. Finally, a steady, protective warmth that settled around her like a comforting cloak. "You feel that?" Daxen asked, watching her closely. "That is a shield. You can project it and you can use it to block others." Saren's breath caught. "Mark's pack," he continued, "was a cacophony of fear and arrogance. It drowned you. A true alpha's pack is a symphony. He conducts. He doesn't scream." Saren blossomed under his guidance. In 3 days, she felt more alive, more herself than she ever had with Varek and the Blood Moon pack. She had learned to walk silently, to trust the whispers of her instincts, to center her mind. And the bond, it deepened. Unlike the fragile, one-sided connection she had felt with Varek, this was something different. A deep hum, a golden cord tightening between them. She couldn't help but watch him, how the silver strands in his hair caught the light of the fire, how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he focused the pure, contained power in every movement. He too seemed affected by her presence. He found reasons to be near her. His hand would rest on her back to correct her stance. He would pass her a mug, his fingers grazing hers in the briefest of touches. There were moments when Saren would catch him staring at her, his icy blue eyes unguarded, filled with something fierce, something possessive. On the third night, as the storm began to ease, the silence in Daxen's communication room was thick with tension. "What is it?" Saren asked, bringing him a cup of tea. He stared at a digital map on the screen, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. "My team. They were supposed to secure the Donovan Pass. They're late. And up here, late means dead." His voice was hard a growl in the depths. "Can you reach them?" Saren asked, her heart in her throat. "The storm's still interfering with the long-range signals. I only have fragments." He muttered, his gaze fixed. "Varek is moving. He knows something's wrong. He's pulling his operation, trying to cover his tracks." "He's escaping," Saren said, a cold dread filling her chest. "He thinks he is—" Daxen snapped, slamming his fist down on the console. "I need eyes on him. I need to know where he's moving his silver." Saren stood tall, her voice clear, unwavering. "I can do it." Daxen turned to her, eyes wide. "Don't be absurd. You'd be dead in an hour." Saren's new confidence solidified. "No, you said it yourself. I'm a ghost. He thinks I'm dead. His pack won't be looking for me. They won't even register my scent as a threat." She met his gaze unflinching. "I can get closer than any of your warriors. I can move silently. I can feel what he's planning. I am an Omega. Let me use it." Daxen stared at her for a long time. There was a war in his eyes. Anger, pride, and fear all fighting for dominance. He saw the girl he'd saved was gone. In her place stood a woman, finally truly a wolf. "It's too dangerous." Daxen's voice was hoarse, almost reluctant. "It's more dangerous to let him run," Saren countered, stepping closer. "You saved my life, Daxen. Now let me help you save your mission." Daxen's eyes searched her face, lingering for a heartbeat on her lips. The air between them thickened the space, alive with a tension that made it hard to breathe. The golden bond between them pulsed suddenly, with a desperate, unspoken need. "If you're caught," he whispered, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed her skin, and the spark of electricity shot through her like fire. "I won't be." She leaned into his touch, her heart racing. His control seemed to break. With a fierce movement, his other hand found her waist, pulling her flush against him. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision of need. "You have no idea what you're asking." His growl rumbled low, his face inches from hers. "If he hurts you, if anyone touches you, I'll tear his whole pack apart and damn the Council's laws." Saren's breath hitched in her throat. This was the Silver Wolf, the power she'd felt on the mountain. She barely whispered his name, Daxen, her hands reaching for his chest. He was about to kiss her. She could feel it. She wanted it more than she had ever wanted anything. But then... Beep, beep, beep. The alarm blared, red lights flashing across his console. Daxen immediately pulled back, his eyes snapping to the screen. "Proximity alert!" He snarled, his voice sharp. "We have company. 2. No 3 wolves at the perimeter. Varek, no." His face hardened into a mask of stone. "It's not Varek. They're tracking me." Saren's stomach dropped. "They must have found the bodies of the rogues I killed." He grabbed a heavy black tactical jacket from a locker. "Stay here." He tossed it to her. "Lock the door. Don't open it for any reason." "What are you going to do?" Saren cried, her heart pounding in her chest. "Take out the trash." Daxen said, his voice dark. He walked to the tunnel entrance, pausing before turning back to her. "And Saren, you were right. You're going to have to be my eyes. But not on Varek. On me. Get to the ventilation shaft." Saren stood, a new sense of purpose settling over her as she nodded. "Watch. Listen. Sense." Before she could respond, he was gone. The stone door slid shut behind him, leaving Saren alone in the bunker. Her mission had begun. Saren's fear was a cold knot in her stomach, but Daxen's training cut through it. Filter it, use it, use. She moved quickly toward the small grated opening in this wall she hadn't noticed before. It was a narrow ventilation shaft that led outside, providing a perfect concealed view of the clearing. The wind had died to a mournful sigh, and the snow fell in soft, thick flakes. Through the shaft, she saw the 3 wolves emerge from the trees. The leader, Thane's beta, was a stocky wolf with dark gray fur. The other 2 were enforcers, massive and brutish, sniffing the air. They were in shifted forms, and their eyes were locked on the spot where Daxen had killed the rogues. Saren closed her eyes just like Daxen had taught her. She filtered out the hum of the bunker, the pounding of her own heart. She reached out with her senses. Thane's emotions hit her first fear. It wasn't just curiosity. Beneath it, a deep, simmering confusion. He was tracking the scent of the dead rogues, but something else was overpowering it. A scent that terrified and awed him. Daxen's scent. She felt his presence before she saw him. He emerged from the hidden door, not as a wolf, but as a man. He was dressed in black tactical gear, his silver hair catching the light of the storm behind him. He stood with arms crossed, calm, a figure of deadly arrogance. The 3 wolves spun, hackles rising. Thane shifted the sound of his change, barely audible over the wind. He stood naked and furious. "Who are you?" Thane growled. "This is Blood Moon territory. You are trespassing." "Am I?" Daxen's voice was quiet, calm, and it carried easily in the still air. "We found 3 dead rogues." Thane pressed his enforcers to flank him, their massive bodies shadowing his. "Slaughtered. That was your work." "It was," Daxen said, his voice cold. "You're an alpha." "Julius." Daxen's voice cut through the tension, his eyes narrowing. "I smell it on you. You have no right to be here, no right to kill on our land." "Identify yourself." Julius growled, his voice tinged with suspicion. "I am Daxen, a traveler," Daxen replied coolly. "A traveler who kills 3 rogues in a blizzard, without breaking a sweat." Julius scoffed, his eyes flashing with disdain. "You're a liar. You're here for the silver. You're working with the poachers." Saren could feel the shift in the air as Julius prodded, trying to goad Daxen into a fight. He was testing him, thinking he was facing just another poacher, but he had no idea what he was up against. Daxen smiled, but it was a cold, thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your alpha deals with poachers, Beta Frost, not me." Julius's fear spiked quickly, replaced by a boiling rage. Daxen had hit a nerve. "You will come with us," Julius said, his voice low and commanding. "Alpha Varek will question you." "No," Daxen's voice was steady, unshaken. "That wasn't a request." Julius snapped his fingers, and the 2 enforcers, massive wolves in their shifted forms, lunged toward Daxen. Saren stifled a scream, her heart pounding, but Daxen didn't flinch. He didn't even shift. He didn't uncross his arms. "Kneel." The word was soft, yet it sliced through the air with the weight of authority. This was no ordinary command. It wasn't just a word, it was a force. The sound vibrated through the air, an unyielding pulse of dominance that hit the very core of their beings. The effect was instant and devastating. The 2 enforcers, charging with savage force, yelped as if struck. Their legs buckled beneath them, and they crashed into the snow, sliding to a stop at Daxen's feet. They weren't just subdued. They were prostrate, their bellies exposed in the ultimate sign of submission. Julius the Beta was hit harder. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he collapsed, his human form crumpling to the ground, hitting the snow with a sickening thud. Though conscious, he couldn't move, his body trembling with the weight of Daxen's command, paralyzed by raw, terrifying power. Saren, even hidden in the vent, felt the echo of it. It washed over her, not as an order, but as an overwhelming, gut-wrenching surge of power. It made her want to shrink, to curl up and purr. Daxen moved toward the trembling Beta. His ice-blue eyes were merciless, his every step radiating authority. "You are a Beta." He crouched before Julius, his voice a deadly soft growl. "You above all should recognize the scent of your superior." Julius gasped, his eyes wide with dawning realization. "No, it's not possible. The scent, that voice, His voice cracked, barely able to form the words. You? You are. I am the one who will burn your traitorous pack to the ground, if you are not very, very careful. Daxen interrupted coldly. He stood up, the tension still thick in the air. Go back to your master Julius Frost. Tell him you found nothing. Tell him the storm has erased all tracks. Julius's lips trembled as he fought to speak. But who? He started. Forget. My scent. Daxen's command was sharp, and Julius's eyes glazed over. The fog of confusion settled over him like a heavy blanket. Now go. Daxen's voice was final. Julius and his enforcers scrambled to their feet, their tails tucked, and fled into the woods without a glance back. Julius, shaking with fear, forced himself to his feet, casting one last, fearful look at Daxen. His eyes were filled with a strange mix of terror and confusion. He didn't remember the scent or the voice, but the fear lingered raw and real. With a stumble, he shifted and clumsily followed his enforcers, disappearing into the trees. Daxen stood there, his chest rising and falling slowly as he breathed in the cold air. He was a predator, a force of nature, untouched by the storm, unshaken by anything that had come before him. Saren scrambled back from the vent, her heart hammering in her chest. She met Daxen in the main room as the stone door slid shut behind him. Daxen! She breathed, her voice still shaky from the encounter. What? What was that? He was shaking, his hands clenched tightly at his sides, the toll of the moment weighing on him. That, he said, his voice a low rasp, was an alpha command. Saren's breath caught in her throat. I felt it. An alpha command. Her voice trembled with awe and something else. Fear, understanding. Saren swallowed hard. Varek used that command on me once. It was loud. It hurt. But what you did... Her voice trembled. That was different. You forced them to their knees. You froze them in place. You made them forget you. Daxen walked to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the storm outside. Not all alphas carry the same weight, Saren. His tone was low, steady. Thane looked like he'd seen a god, she whispered. He recognized you, but he couldn't place it. That power. Her breath caught. Daxen, who are you? He didn't answer. He stood there for a long moment, watching the snow drift and spiral, the bond between them humming a live wire of her confusion and his quiet restraint. The storm's breaking, he finally said, his voice cool, controlled. The comms are clearing. My team made it through. They've secured Donovan Pass. That's good, Saren murmured, still rattled by what she'd witnessed. It is, he replied. But when he turned toward her, the warmth he'd shown earlier had vanished. His expression had hardened into something distant, commanding. And Varek is making his move. He's calling his patrols back. He's stockpiling silver at the main lodge. His jaw flexed. He's getting ready to run. So what happens now, she asked. Daxen's voice dropped deep and final. Now the surveyor is done. It's time for the judge to act. His ice-blue gaze locked onto hers, sharp enough to cut. I'm going back to your pack, Saren. A beat passed. And you're coming with me. The trek to the Blood Moon Lodge was the most terrifying walk of Saren's life. Daxen outfitted her in real winter gear, black insulated pants, heavy boots, and a gray parka that blended with the forest. They moved like shadows through the trees, Daxen leading with silent confidence, Saren following with the careful footwork he had drilled into her. He spoke nothing about what happened with Thane. He was all focus, all mission. Varek will have guards, Saren whispered, as they neared the ridge overlooking the lodge. They won't see us, Daxen murmured. He was right. He guided them through a hidden route, a dry stream bed, narrow, frost-packed trails Saren never knew existed, slipping past every patrol unnoticed. They stopped at the tree line, staring down at smoke curling from the great hall. Midday. Saren's stomach lurched. He'll kill me the second he sees me. He won't lay a hand on you, Daxen said. He turned toward her, and for a heartbeat the mask cracked. He reached for her gloved hand. Do you trust me, Saren? She met those storm-blue eyes, the eyes of the man who saved her life, trained her, treated her with a respect she'd never tasted before. Yes, she answered steady. Good. He released her hand. Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. And no matter what happens, don't be afraid. Then he stepped out of the trees. Daxen didn't sneak. He didn't hide. He crossed the clearing like the snow belonged to him, striding straight toward the lodge doors with the authority of someone who didn't ask permission to exist. 2 guards at the entrance jerked upright hands flying to their blades. Halt! This is restricted. Open the door, Daxen said. It wasn't a command, just his voice. But the weight in it made their instincts recoil, and one guard's eyes wide in confusion pulled the heavy door open before he could stop himself. Daxen walked inside. Saren followed, shaking so hard she felt her teeth rattle. The great hall was chaos. Wolves hauling crates. Bundles everywhere. They were packing up to flee. Varek stood at the front yelling at Thane. What do you mean you found nothing? 3 rogues don't vanish, and that scent, damn it you, useless alpha. Thane began, but then he saw Daxen, his face drained of blood. Silence spread like wildfire. Heads turned. Voices died. Every eye in the lodge locked onto the silver-haired stranger, walking in like judgment itself. Then they saw Saren. Gasps rippled through the hall. Naira dropped a crate, her hands flying to her mouth. Rowan stumbled backward. Varek spun around. When his eyes landed on Saren, his expression twisted, shifting from disbelief into venomous, murderous rage. You! He spat, storming toward them. You're alive. I cast you out. You dare walk back into my hall. Varek's voice was a snarl that cracked through the great hall like lightning. Then his gaze snapped to Daxen, curling into a venomous smirk. And you brought a rogue lover with you. Saren flinched, but Daxen placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. She's no pet, he said, his tone deathly calm. And I am no rogue. I don't care what you are, Varek spat. You both broke my law. Guards seize them. They'll die as traitors. Bren and Calyx, the same enforcers from the woods, stepped forward, but their posture was off, hesitant. They remembered something, even if they couldn't remember what. Varek. Daxen's voice dropped deep as a thunder. Your reign is over. My reign. Varek barked a harsh laugh. Who the hell do you think you are, stray? You walk into my lodge with the Omega. I rejected and dare threaten me, blinded by arrogance. Varek shifted. His black wolf exploded outward, claws tearing at the floor tables, flipping wolves scrambling back. Huge. Deadly. A true alpha. He launched himself at Daxen. Saren screamed, but Daxen didn't shift. He didn't brace. He simply moved. A blur too fast to follow. He caught Varek's foreleg midair and used the wolf's momentum against him, slamming him into the stone floor with bone-splintering force. A sickening crack rang through the hall. Varek roared, one leg twisted broken. He lunged again, snarling, but Daxen planted his boot on the wolf's neck, pinning him to the ground like he weighed nothing. The entire pack froze in horror, their alpha destroyed in seconds. By an unshifted man. You stand accused. Daxen said, his voice suddenly layered, with silver command echoing through every nerve in the room. Of trafficking with rogues, of violating the Elysium Pact, of attempted murder, of exiling an innocent for your own crimes. Varek writhed beneath his boot. You can't. I'm the alpha. You are a disgrace, Daxen said coldly. He lifted his head, his ice-blue gaze sweeping the paralyzed pack. You have been ruled by a traitor. I have tracked him for months. Today, judgment falls. Thane staggered forward, trembling. Who? Who are you? He whispered the question the entire pack held in their throats. That command, that power. Only one bloodline. Daxen lifted his boot from Varek's throat and straightened the air around him, shifting, crackling with ancient authority. He spoke his name like a verdict. I am Daxen Artorius Valuiris. His voice rolled like thunder, shaking the hall itself. First of my name, Lord of Silvermoon City, Protector of the Territories, Alpha King of all werewolves. The words hit like a physical shockwave. Saren's world stopped. Daxen, the quiet, intense man who saved her life, trained her, touched her like she mattered. He wasn't just an alpha, he was the alpha. The ruler of all packs, the supreme authority over their entire world. Every wolf in the Blood Moon pack crumpled to the ground, Julius the guards, Naira Rowan. Every man, woman, and child dropped flat faces, pressed to the stone in absolute submission. All except two, Saren, frozen beside him, and Varek broken and bleeding beneath the boots of the king's guard. At that moment, 6 warriors entered from behind black and silver armor, polished spears, grim expressions. Ardin, Kelric, Fenric, Dren, Halvan, Rin, the royal guard. They surrounded Varek, weapons leveled. Judgment had arrived. Your Majesty, Thane stammered into the floor, shaking violently. We didn't know. We swear loyalty, your loyalty, Daxen said. Voice like winter steel was given to a traitor. He stepped closer. You sensed my authority in the woods. And even then, you chose fear over truth. Thane whimpered. But you did not strike. Daxen's tone softened only a fraction. For that your life is spared. He turned back to Varek now, just a shattered, trembling man, held by the royal guard. Then he moved to Saren, took her hand, pulled her firmly to his side. His arm wrapped around her waist, anchoring her against him. His voice dropped to a lethal whisper that carried through the room. You called her a broken Omega. The hall went dead still. Every wolf held their breath. Daxen's ice-blue eyes burned with a fury that shook the walls. And for that, your judgment begins. You said you felt no mate bond. Daxen's voice cut through the hall like a blade. And you were right about one thing, Varek. You didn't feel anything. He turned towards Saren, his ice-blue gaze softening in a way that stunned every wolf watching. You felt nothing, Daxen declared, because she was never your mate. She was always mine. A deeper shock rippled through the pack. Varek's face drained to ash as the truth hit him. He hadn't just cast out an Omega. He had exiled the Alpha King's fated mate, the future Lunar Queen. The bond I felt. Saren whispered, her eyes locked on Daxen. It wasn't him, it was you. Daxen's voice, gentled, meant only for her. I sensed you long before I ever saw your face. You were the Howl calling me home. He pulled her firmly into his side, his arm locked around her waist, claiming her before the entire pack. You cast out your Lunar Queen, Daxen said sharply. You left her to die in the snow. A shudder rolled across the wolves on the floor. Naira cried out, her voice breaking. We were blind. Saren, please, mercy. Saren looked at the wolves who had mocked her, the ones who had watched her suffer. But she remembered Daxen's training, and Omega carries the heart of the pack. She stepped forward, Daxen's hand still holding hers. Stand, she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but carried the unmistakable steadiness of a queen. You were blind. Saren continued, her gaze sweeping through the kneeling wolves. You followed corruption. You forgot that a pack is a family measured by how it protects its weakest. She met Thane's eyes. You will lead this pack until a true alpha rises. Atone for your weakness by serving them with honor. Stunned by her mercy, Thane bowed deeply. My queen. I will not fail you. Guards, Daxen commanded, his voice turning cold steel. Take this filth to Silvermoon City. He'll await judgment there. Arden Kelric. Fenric. Drenhalvin and Rin seized Varek and dragged him forward. As Varek passed Saren, hatred flickered through his eyes. "This isn't over, Omega," he hissed. Before he could speak another word, Daxen was on him. He gripped Varek's throat, silver power burning in his eyes. Silence. Varek gagged, his voice ripped from him by command. "You will never address your queen that way again." Daxen growled, every word a lethal promise. "The next time you see her will be when she passes judgment on your life." He shoved Varek back to the royal guards, who dragged him out into the snow. Then Daxen turned back to Saren. The king, the same man who had shattered an alpha without shifting, dropped to one knee before her. He took her hand, his voice rough with a rawness he never showed anyone. "Saren, you followed my Howl through the storm. You are the heart I never knew I was missing. Will you be my queen?" Tears slipped down Saren's cheeks. She pulled him to his feet. "I'm already yours, Daxen, my king." For the first time, a true smile lit Daxen's hard features. He kissed her right there in front of the pack that had once rejected her and the guards sworn to protect her. Their bond sealed stronger than any rejection, stronger than any storm. The rejected Omega had come home, and now she was the Lunar Queen. Saren's rise from the lodge floor to the throne beside the Alpha King was complete. But the challenges ahead were only beginning. Varek was imprisoned, but his final look promised vengeance. And somewhere across the territories, powerful Alphas would soon learn their new queen was an Omega. The real storm had only just begun.